This week on Taking the Supply Chain Pulse, Fred welcomes back a familiar voice and trusted friend, Brent Petty. Brent is a seasoned healthcare supply chain leader with deep expertise and consulting experience, particularly in children's hospitals. In this episode, he shares practical insights and actionable strategies to help professionals thrive in today's rapidly evolving healthcare landscape. Grab your pen and paper because you won't want to miss these takeaways. And now, here's your host, Fred Kranz.
My friend Brent Petty is back to talk to us about his recent experiences as a consultant in children's hospital healthcare, some of his historical background at his previous places of employment, what he thinks about rural and underserved areas of healthcare in the country, and whatever other issues may come up. Brent, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Fred, good morning. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
It's always a pleasure to have you on, brother. I know you recently have had a foray into individual consulting and interim leadership in supply chain again, and you've been working in children's hospitals. And I know that prior employment, you were in what I would call a traditional healthcare IDN in Wellmont. That didn't focus on children's issues. And I just wondered if you could give us an overview of some of the concerns or some of the challenges that children's hospitals have that are maybe different from your previous hospitals.
Yeah, it's a great subject. And I think children's hospitals are not as well known from a supply chain challenge standpoint than what you and I would call our traditional acute care hospital. So let me throw this out here. One thing, there's a couple of terms I learned working in a children's facility is high mix, low volume. And I had not heard that before from a supply chain standpoint. So being the curious person I am, I looked over and I was like, I don't understand. What do you mean high mix, low volume? And it's very simple. It's a lot of different items, but not as many of each. And I was like, Take me a little deeper. And they're like, it's a lot of different items. So you go from a newborn neonate up to a teenager that could be the size of me and you, but still a teenager. So you've got a lot of different items to serve a same disease set or a trauma or something like that, but you don't need as many of each one. So that was a new term to me, and I thought a great way to start this. You know, I learned there are pediatric specific SKUs. Children are not small adults. I learned that. They have to prepare a little bit quicker for seasonal, such as trauma or respiratory infections or flus or those type things. They have to prepare a little sooner because there is less available supplies in this children's hospital environment. So those are some of the things right off the bat that I learned working in a true children's hospital environment.
You know what's interesting about that, Brent, and what I've always liked about you, and I've learned to do the same thing. When I came from healthcare supply chain into working with St. Ives, where I'm working with folks that work in real supply chains, there were a whole bunch of terms that I had no clue what they meant. And what I always try to do is I'll write them down, and if I can figure them out, I'm okay. But after I've written them down, I will go look them up, right? Yeah. And you had the wherewithal to say, hey, I don't understand what this high mix, low volume is. Could you explain it to me? And I think if you were to give advice to a new guy, if I just came into supply chain, what would you give to advice about someone about all the abbreviations and acronyms that people are going to hear that I have no clue what they mean?
Yeah, and I don't care if you're 2 weeks into the supply chain career or 2 decades. You need to ask. You need to be curious and ask for clarification. And I encourage everybody to continue your education. It can be formal. or it cannot be formal. It can be college, it can be a certification, it can be a certificate, but do constant learning. And these terms are a great way to do that constant learning. I've never had a term, an abbreviation, or an acronym in healthcare that didn't lead to a good understanding of helping the patient care environment. It really works that way.
Yeah, a big part of that is getting over your own ego, because a lot of us think we're supposed to know everything, and there's no way you can. Everybody speaks in their own jargon. You know, the anesthesiologists speak in the anesthesiology jargon, the cardiologist. We don't know we're not supposed to know what those terms are unless we ask.
Right.
But we can't do our job unless we know what they mean. You know.
But you know, healthcare people by nature, by heart, by training, they're helpful people. Just ask. Go be curious and say, hey, show me what you're doing. Show me what this means. Explain what, high mix, low volume means. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've never heard the term.
Yep.
And it was simple enough and very accurate to summarize the situation.
So, as far as, I guess, urgency and the need to respond quickly for, crazy demands, as opposed to a regular hospital system with sort of predictable supply needs. Is that something that children's hospital supply leaders face?
Absolutely. And it's always been tough, is what I discovered, that the demand planning, the inventory levels, the different SKUs, even the manufacturers, some of them have a different call team for the children's hospital versus what I'm going to call the adult hospitals. You see a total different set of reps. And I sort of got to understand that, because when you're doing an open heart surgery on a neonate or a teenager, or a scoliosis surgery or a pacemaker, those are different environments for the physician and the nurses and the sales reps. So I did see that it does take some different planning, and I don't want to jump too deep into the one big beautiful bill, but some of the reimbursement changes that have been pushed down to the states where these children's hospital operates, they got to be a little more savvy in how they plan their inventories, how they plan their capital purchases, and then manage their wages. Can they give raises, and can they add to the benefits? But the one big beautiful bill has influenced that. And I'll give you just a quick example. Lots of times when we look at procedures that involve implants, we'll look at the average reimbursement, and then we may not look at that average reimbursement again for the length of that contract. The one big beautiful bill has now required us to look at those reimbursements more often, if not once a year, but at least twice a year, instead of over that term of the contract.
Yeah, that I wasn't going to get into politics, but you can't discuss our job anymore without giving concern to politics. So the one thing that I think is I've always admired about you is you have a way of connecting with people, and you're not threatening to people. You have the sort of down home. I know it's all an act. I know you're really smart.
No, it's true.
I know you're really smart, but you don't act that smart most of the time. So that's good. I do the same thing myself. But you were the chief relationship officer for Bluegrass Media, which sponsors several conferences and reverse expos every year.
Right.
I'm the outreach ambassador for the Bellwether League. And over the years, there's been one thing that's a craw under my skin more than anything else. And that's when I hear people talking about, you need to build a network. You need to go networking. And I tell people, and they would say, could you talk to me about how to build a network? I said, no, I can't, because I don't do that.
Yeah.
I make friends. I build relationships. And I know that's how you found out about the high mix, low volume stuff, by building relationships. I know you used to manage probably the same way I did, which is walking around knowing everybody and everything in the hospital. Tell us how you feel about the value of relationships versus the transactional thing of building of networking.
Yeah. So it's a great piece of conversation, and I believe something that is being lost on the generation today that you and I have made careers on is building a relationship. Of course, when I think about networking, I think about IT and wires hanging from the ceiling and all that. So relationships are what successes are built on. I don't care if it's a personal relationship, a business relationship. Those relationships really are the key to successes. You and I both attend several conferences per year, and we get the most value out of continuing our relationships and building new relationships. And that's how I find out things. You know, Fred, I sent out an email this morning to several people. A CFO had asked a particular question, and I needed to weigh in on it. I didn't send it to a network. I sent it to relationships. And those are the people who are going to give you the stern advice, the correct advice, the advice that you need. They're the ones that you turn to during hard times. When you've got something tough. Hey, Fred, I wouldn't ever not pick up the phone and say, hey, this is what I'm about to do. Is it the dumbest thing you've ever heard, or is it the best thing you've ever heard? Or is it somewhere in between? Never underestimate the value of a good conversation. And the only way you can have a good conversation is based on a relationship. And those take time. You and I both know that. We had to get to know each other. And that relationship development versus a network development is a lost art today. It really is.
And I think it's been something that has moved both of our careers along. And you can't go anywhere without running into people, and those relationships keep giving you more and more from those things.
Fred,
go ahead.
Let me make you commit to a promise here in front of everybody. Let our next podcast topic include how a successful adventure came about between you and I having a relationship. Now that hadn't happened. The relationship hasn't led to the new endeavor I might take, but I want to cover that in our next podcast. Can't tell them about it today, but we'll tell them about it in the next one.
Before we dive back in, you may be asking yourself, is my supply chain future ready? At C&H Company, we don't just optimize logistics, we engineer smarter, leaner, and more resilient systems from end to end. From manufacturing to retail to healthcare, our experts bring decades of experience and cutting-edge strategies to transform your operations. Visit and discover how we're shaping the future of supply chain one solution at a time.
Yeah, well, I can tell them about something that happened to me and to the company I was working for when one of the supply chain leaders called you and asked you who could handle a certain project, and out of the blue you called me, and I think I knew the guy, but I didn't know him well. I never would have had any idea that project was coming, and that's years over year, and boom, the right moment comes up, and then the friendship and the relationship kicks in and can help each other. That's what we should be looking forward to, in my opinion.
Yes.
Another thing, you live in an area, we were talking earlier, I think you said you live in an area where you can very quickly get to North Carolina and Kentucky and West Virginia. So you live in Appalachia, really.
Yes,
and
I do.
When we get back into that big, beautiful bill, you live in one of the areas that is going to be most likely negatively impacted as far as access to health care by that bill.
Yes.
You have in there many smaller IDNs trying to survive. So what kind of challenges do those organizations, those people, and those supply chains face today as opposed to before that bill came along?
Well, first and foremost, I think the biggest challenge in Appalachia, where I live, and other parts of the country that have true rural health care, and that's what we have here. We do have small IDNs, and communities that depend on them. Okay, so you lose your local hospital, you may be an hour from any type of urgent care or emergency care, and that could mean disability or life or death. So with that, I think the first thing these rural healthcare systems need to do is understand their current state as solid as they can. I don't care if it's, their contracts, whether it's a payer mix or a supplier mix, whatever contracts you're talking about, you have to first understand, where are you today? And then from there, you can say, okay, where do I need to be? And then you can develop the strategy or the strategic plan in between those 2 points. But where I see a lot of the smaller health systems, they're trying to dig in and either get a better payer mix, improve on the current payer mix, or better supply contracts to reduce the overall cost, or planning to reduce those costs in some way. But they don't have a solid platform of, where am I today? What am I spending my money on? What did I do last year, and did I meet my goals? And I know that sounds simple, but that's what I'm finding out in rural healthcare.
Yeah, and you get back to just the cost and the impact of having revenues taken away. It's got to be terribly scary for those folks. And
right. And when people reach out to me in rural healthcare, which I grew up in, I grew up working in rural hospitals. I grew up working at community health systems, which at the time had all rural health hospitals. And they look at me and they say, what should we do first? And I was like, first, let's set up some KPIs and these key performance metrics, your benchmark, your scorecard, whatever you want to call them. I said, you can't change anything if you don't understand where you are today. And I tell these people, don't come out here with 10 or 12 KPIs. I mean, you're just, back to the relationship thing. You want to ruin a good relationship. Confuse somebody. And that's what you're going to do with too many KPIs. You can certainly build up to that, but I encourage you to pick 2 or 3 that you can really set a baseline, understand where you were this year and last year, and where you need to be successful next year. And one of those things is your Medicare and Medicaid, the CMS reimbursements. Are you making, and I'm not going to say, let me rephrase it. Are you breaking even on those patients? Right. And do you know that? From a supply chain standpoint.
It's interesting because I used to try to build KPIs into clinical areas. And what I would always do is go to the director and say, look, we want to measure your performance, but you pick the key metric that you want to measure, that we can measure, and we'll use that metric. And we're not going to measure you against the rest of the country. We're going to measure you against you so we can see how we're improving. When we make a change, we can see the impact of that change. And by doing that, by giving them the opportunity to pick what they wanted to measure, and then by not measuring them against the whole country, which I've seen that's a way to just kill your credibility with the folks you work with when you measure yourself against the Cleveland Clinic, because it ain't going to work. Okay.
I agree.
and that worked out well. But you get to another point about the rural IDNs and stuff, is how do they attract the talent they need to survive? Because nobody wants to live in many of those areas. How do they find the quality of supply chain leaders that they need to go forward successfully?
That's a tough question, and I'd love to hear some of our talent acquisition experts weigh in on that. But from my perspective, you've got to recruit the homegrown talent. You've got to look around and see who is locally. And when I say locally, within 100 miles, it doesn't have to be down the street, because we're small communities, but we are all connected. So you got to look for, same thing with the local colleges recruiting their football guys. And then they're looking at the local talent. you have to look at the local talent. And Fred, unfortunately, I'm going to say outside of healthcare industry, because we do have some big industry, our coal mines, it's a big industry, some very expensive supplies and equipment needs there. So we can borrow from other industries, but we're going to have to grow our own talent and look at our own talent.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. I was talking to Ed Hiscock from Trinity, and he just retired, and someone from Trinity got the position to replace him.
Yes.
And what's always bothered me is that we will bring in some hot shot from the outside to take the supply chain leader position, and then the whole place will be messed up as we convert to that person's leadership style and stuff for 4 or 5 years. And we'll have people that have worked there forever, that there's no career ladder and there's no hope of having an opportunity to actually win the position of leadership. And I think that's wrong. I think that one of the things that a supply chain leader should be doing is assessing his or her talent and developing them so that there's an opportunity for them to grab the key role when that person retires or moves on.
I couldn't agree more, Fred. Succession planning is sort of lost in the healthcare industry right now. There's a lot of folks who are aging out, and then there's not a plan to replace them internally, and it's very expensive and often not as successful as you would like.
Yep. I know that back in 1983, when I left Miami to go to Canton, Ohio, I was fortunate there. The guy that was running the supply chain was a Latvian guy named Leonard Puduls, Puduls. And he hired me as the associate director of materials. And I worked as the associate director for a year before he retired. So that by the time he finally retired, I was ready. I knew people. It's way different than the way we do things today, perhaps.
You bet.
What do you think about the talent pool today?
It's strong. It's just real thin. The ones that are available and eligible, I think, are going to make good leaders. One of the biggest things I see today is not putting the time in. Put your time in before you become the director or the associate director or the VP or whatever the tip of the spear may be in that health system. I see a lot of talent that is raw and has very good potential, but they want to be the boss today. They don't want to put their time in, and I get it. You've invested in your education. So now take the same resources and invest in your experience. I don't think education is a substitute for experience at all. I encourage you to get your education, but I also encourage you to get the experience and take the time to get the experience. And, how much time did you spend in the hallway talking to the director, whether it's the nursing or respiratory or the medical director of a service line? Put your time in, get your experience, and then you'll become a much better leader. But there it is, very thin in numbers. We are fighting.
But I know that from a technical standpoint or from an educational standpoint, the folks that are coming into the business today are way ahead of where we were. I started out as a nursing assistant after I got out of the military, so I went from nurse's aide to supply chain leader. But by the time I had 1 day of management experience, I'd had 7 years of doing the work, knowing how it gets done. These guys don't have that. They come out with the degree, and then they have to learn what goes on. They know a lot of buzzwords, and they're very bright, very, very bright people.
Yes.
I mean, I've met so many of them. So many of the young folks really are going to have great careers, and I think part of our job is those of us that are the older folks that are still in the industry, through places like ARM and through the various conferences, is to sort of become sort of soft mentors for these people, to folks that they can relate to help them learn. And you've done a good job about that. I mean, I watch the way you interact with people, and it's It's a responsibility we all have, I think.
You bet.
So what else do you want to talk about that I haven't asked today, buddy?
Well, we just completed I'm going to call it the April to August conference tour.
Yep.
And we're seeing a little different attendance. Let me put it that way. And, I've worked with the different conferences, and I see you at many of them. I see a lot of relationships that I've built at these, but I'm real concerned about the younger generation. Is that how they want to build their relationships or gain additional learning, is coming to these conferences? And I'm thinking probably not. I think they want to develop a different way, and I think we may lose the relationship development that you and I already talked about, but also the additional education, learning from your peers. I mean, that's the best learning. You've discussed it already. I think this younger generation is not conference goers, and that's one thing that we've got to replace. So it'd be interesting to see how we approach that.
Yeah, I never looked at it that way, but I think you're probably right. It is going to be interesting. There are a lot of bright folks out there. I mean, I do a lot of work with the Bellwether League, so I do know a lot of the future famers, and the ones that the best of the young folks are doing the right things, or they're going to be doing the right things, if you know what I mean. But the other folks need to learn, and I don't know if the mentors are around that we had.
Right.
I was fortunate enough to have had people bring me into the room and close the door and tell me what I was doing wrong and what I needed to do better. And I don't even know if today's management world, people have the courage to do that without having to worry about the possible consequences of the person that you're talking to going to someone saying that you were doing terrible things to them. So it's harder to do it now than it was then.
Yeah, see, I had a couple of great mentors that allowed me to fail and fail miserably and then bail me out. They let me get in the ditch, and then they got me out of the ditch. And that's invaluable, Fred.
Yeah.
But, I congratulate like the Bellwether League and the future famers. Arm's got the YPAC, the young professionals.
Yep.
But I'm worried, is it enough? I mean, the talent that those two groups have are very notable talents, but it's not enough to replace, in my opinion, today, the old gray-haired folks leaving.
Yeah. We'll see. And I think things are only going to get more difficult as time goes by. I mean,
I agree.
I think of that whole rural healthcare, and I go back to Vietnam with me. And if you were a soldier getting shot in a jungle in Vietnam, you got better and quicker care than if you're a woman going into labor, a terrible labor somewhere in the middle of Montana where there are no hospitals around today.
100%. Same way where I live.
Your husband's got to get in the car and hope that he can get you 200 miles to a place of treatment in time to save your life and the babies. Where we had that guy in a helicopter. That guy was in the next best place in 20 minutes, the next best place after that an hour later, and maybe back in the continental United States tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's way different than what we're looking at now. So times are challenging out there. I know that one of these days we're going to see Brent Petty back in the regular flow of things, because in my opinion, your best place is doing the job of running a supply chain somewhere, and I'd like to see that happen again.
Well, Fred, I appreciate the kind words and always the opportunity to share. I think that's one thing that we've got to keep doing is sharing our experiences and our knowledges, and just stay in front of the people and bring them along.
Yep. Well, hey, dude, it's been great having you on the podcast, and we'll have you back again sometime to talk about that one thing you wanted to talk about that we didn't talk about today.
I'm going to hold you to it, Fred.
Okay, brother. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks.
Take care.
Take care.
Well, that's all for today. Thanks again for joining. And as always, don't forget to subscribe and connect with us online where you can find all of our episodes. If you have a topic you would like to discuss, or want to be a guest on the show, you can reach out to Fred directly at fcrans@stonge.com. See you next time.